That's okay. IT logistics. Vice Chair Sliwa.
Here.
Trustee Brown.
Present.
President Naganathan will return in a moment. Trustee Peterson.
Here.
Trustee Stewart.
Here.
Trustee Viari should be on his way. So, Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Great, thank you very much. All right, so for the consent agenda, unless there's any discussion or move something from there, we'll go ahead and approve that. All right, the agenda approved. Action items. So we have today one action item to discuss, and perfect timing. And then we have a couple of good discussion items that will follow. So for item 3.1 today, we're here to discuss a recommendation to the full board regarding the naming of the new softball stadium. And AVP Ricketts has joined us to give us some background first.
So we are getting ready to take on some significant renovations to the current softball stadium. Thanks significantly to the contributions of John and Lois Stillwell, who are local supporters of the university. The field will have a new turf field, new bullpens, wraparound bleachers with improved press boxes. It will also have improvements to walkways and signage, but it will have a new field house that includes concessions, restrooms, team rooms for visiting teams and our teams. Their contribution makes the project possible for us. It's a significant project. It's going to help us meet some of our short-term goals, including promoting university pride and elevating our campuses to be the preferred destination for students, employees, and the community. The Board of Trustees policy on delegation of authority states that the board retains the right to approve the naming and renaming of university buildings and outdoor areas and other assets in recognition of individuals or organizations. University policy OIT 50050 also provides the opportunity to recognize significant gifts that have an impact to the campus by acknowledging donors with the dedication of those spaces, and may do so after a living person if the Board of Trustees find that the donor contributes a substantial share of the cost of the construction. It specifically addresses at least 50%. The contribution to this project exceeds that by quite a bit. It is a majority of the project. The foundation held a meeting on February 9th to propose that the softball field be named in honor of John and Lois Stillwell in recognition of their significant contribution to this project and through their support of students through about 8 or 9 endowed scholarships and just being longtime supporters and friends to our students and the university. And just Dr. Nagy, you want to talk about the recommendation, or would you like me to? So the President Naganathan and the Foundation Board both agreed to recommend that the Executive Committee of the Board of Trustees make a recommendation to the full board to name the new softball stadium the John and Lois Stillwell Stadium in honor of John and Lois and recognize their generous gifts of support to the project and Oregon Tech.
Do I have a motion? We'll have discussion.
Second.
All right, discussion? Questions, comments?
Am I misreading that this requires HEC approval for a living person?
No, that was the previous statute, and so we read it as though, so if it says HEC or chancellor, we then interpret it as university board and president.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
So discussion item number 1 is, so is there any known risk for doing this?
Not that, I mean,
So normally what happens is, for example, a famous comedian just had his name taken off of a building at Temple University's alma mater because it was deemed that inappropriate.
Okay.
So I'm trying to say, is there any risk that we know of for?
Most certainly not. I will say Lois Stillwell was a former Foundation board member before her passing. They've been long-standing members of the community and are involved in multiple charitable projects throughout the community and have been very supportive and have been very wonderful community members for lots of partners.
That's what I expected you to say. So yes, so no risk. Great.
I'll have more coffee next time.
but it raises the point with respect to, I guess, it's would be my understanding that when something is brought to our attention, that we've already gone through all of this whole process, so we don't have to
Yes.
do that ourselves.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I think, when the proposal is made, that would be a good thing, just to
Include.
point out that we don't have any risks that we're aware of.
Perfect.
Yeah, so,
We will be sure to include that in the future. Thank you.
and then, want to bring up here?
No, you go ahead. Oh, well, okay. The issue of the match, the 50-50 match that that's in our policy currently seems to me, and maybe you probably have the best insight into this, may stifle your ability to raise substantial gifts if, for example, we want to have a building named after somebody, then that person is going to have to pay up $10-20 million, so which will be fantastic. But then there are also people who have $1 or $2 million gifts, and most times at other institutions that is kind of the threshold that people may have for a named building or something like that. So I'm wondering whether that 50-50 proviso may make it more difficult for you to raise substantial funds for naming opportunities, etc.
I think that that's a very valid concern. We haven't had significant capital projects in the last several years, so that hasn't been something that's come up. But as the new building is coming forward, I think it certainly warrants some conversation.
So I personally don't like to have a policy where the dollars are required. And I can say I used a situation where when we built a dorm complex where we were able to honor some famous alums, we were able to honor some important people for the institution, not because they put money into it, but because we wanted to build a culture of acceptance and recognition of some of our key players. And so I think the current policy could stifle some of that. And it might be something where it would be good to put that on the agenda to consider modernizing it a bit.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'd be happy to have that be part of our future discussion to modify that. And if there's other policies that fit under that umbrella that we may not be as aware of, it's been 4 years almost since we went through a number of those. And so, if something else comes up as well along that spirit, please raise it for us.
Thank you.
Let's see, on this particular one, how has our engagement been with this particular project? Has Mr. Stillwell reviewed the plans?
He's been very engaged. So the project has even grown a little bit because people have shared with him on the university things that would be meaningful. So he's been very involved in the project. He's very excited about it.
Okay, so we've done a great job of engagement. So that's, congratulations, that's really good.
A lot of people did, Tracy and Brian and Tom, and many people have been engaged. So it's been an exciting project for us.
Well, it goes to my question. I want to make sure that they'll be happy with their name on the building when it's done. So I'm glad to hear
Very
they're
excited.
engaged. Okay.
Did they ask for the naming to be included with the gift?
They did not.
Just another example of why they're such wonderful people.
Yep.
I've met John Stillwell, so I echo what's been said about the engagement institution.
He's probably still back watching softball. I'm waiting to come back now.
Other discussion, questions? All right, I'll take the vote. All those in favor of recommending to the full board to name the new softball stadium as presented here, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Anybody abstaining? Motion carries. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. for your support.
Terrific having things like that be on our action items. All right, I love this.
I had the pleasure of meeting Lois. Actually, she interviewed me in this very room during my presidential interview process. And tragically, we lost her last year due to cancer, and we got to recognize them with the laboratory in the Dow building for their other contributions. So it's wonderful to be able to do this.
All right, so moving into our discussion items. Our first is a 4.1 update on compensation, philosophy ad hoc committee, and I'm going to look to Dr. Naganathan to give us some background on what he's thinking.
Well, around the time I came into office, the administration had rolled out a compensation study with an external firm, MGT. And that their report was just beginning to come in, and there were lots of discussions. And the management implemented a portion of the recommendation, which is to bring a certain number of people to the minimums they recommended. This is the first time I hear of a compensation philosophy on a university campus driven entirely by the zip codes in which people teach. And that has been in place at Oregon Tech for whatever reasons. And that also led to some awkward conversations on campus. For example, we have departments that teach both engineering and engineering technology. And one of the decisions, recommendations of the MGT company was to determine where those composite departments would belong. For example, they said our MMET department, which teaches both engineering and technology, they are more rightfully in the technology zip code rather than engineering zip code, whereas the civil engineering is entirely in an engineering zip code because they don't have technology. And that has led to, in my opinion, not so constructive conversations, people saying, I teach engineering subjects, but you think I should be paid. Given my personal philosophy that it should not be associated entirely with the zip codes, I have had conversations. But at the same time, there was a lot of angst on campus that this study was being ignored. Apparently, faculty have been involved in this for 7-8 years. And then ultimately, the previous provost made the decision to commission to study with MGT. So in hallway conversations and campus conversations, I learned of faculty concerns. And then I wanted to assure them that study is not being ignored. But then we really have to look at compensation in a different light. I have shared my philosophy that I don't believe it should be based on zip code, even though when you look at the market, I am sure all these factors weigh in, which subject you teach, what the market situation is, all those factors come in. And another one, to the best of my knowledge, and Trustee Peterson, correct me if I'm wrong, there has been a merit policy in the books for almost a decade or more, but then it has never been used.
That's correct.
So, and that is, people are more comfortable giving this across the board, which raise. So I felt as we are trying to introduce new programs, more entrepreneurial thinking, there has to be a merit component that is brought in more actively into the compensation philosophy. Instead of simply legislating it, I had conversations in faculty groups, and I then appointed a task force which really draws upon people that have experience in faculty discussions. And I know there are some minority opinions that may not quite agree with the direction I have chosen to go with, which is a task force that includes a lot more faculty than only members of the current faculty senate, because the faculty senate has 2 committees. One is on compensation, other one is on welfare. And those groups are the ones primarily that discuss compensation, I understand. I felt there are other people on campus I have run into, and they have said there is no recognition of merit, irrespective of what I produce. Everybody gets the same set of dollars at the end and so on. So respectful of these various opinions, I appointed a task force. I also invited members of those committees from Faculty Senate, and Stephanie Pope and Sandy Hannon from Budget and HR. They are participating in the process so they can get the right kind of information. I identified 2 phases. The first phase to discuss the merit component. How can we introduce merit in our compensation philosophy? Just to make sure this is not some shallow conversation, I even committed to a certain dollars, which is about 0.5% of our, what an increase would be to merit, so that we can roll it out as part of the next year's compensation cycle. And in the second one, I wanted some broader thinking, not simply what faculty should be paid. I'm very sensitive to the fact, I empathize that many people in this institution and others took salary reductions when the state went through the recessional cycle. But I'm also making them aware with the new data-informed decisions on campus that we need to pay attention to enrollment because Klamath Falls, as one of the campuses of Oregon Tech, has not grown to its full potential. If any, we are leaking, and we cannot afford to do that. So this is a conversation not just on what people should be paid, creating an awareness of enrollment and compensation. They are all interrelated. The more people participate, the more rewards those departments will get. That way, that's why the merit component is important for the compensation to go up. So there is a task force of about 14 people that are meeting right now. I have invited Brian Moravec, the Associate Dean of Engineering, Technology, and Management, a very experienced chair, and also Paula, suddenly her last name is slipping my mind. Russell. She's the chair of a dental hygiene program. So one from health sciences, one from the engineering side. And they are part of the 14-member task force to talk about this. I don't expect easy convergence. There would be, I expect some reluctance about the merit component and so on, but we want diverse opinion. We want people to share their opinions openly about this, but we do want to get it to a conclusion. My hope is with the adjustments we are making in the budget process, as people contribute to growth, they could see the rewards coming in those units. So that is where the task force is meeting at this time. And also, Provost has said it in many occasions, and I have repeated in many occasions, that we cannot look at each one of them in separate silos, the workload, the tenure, promotion, renewal policies, as well as the compensation. These are all interrelated. So as an institution, for example, even the current strategic plan calls for more activity in applied research and innovation. And that is not as easily infused into the current culture. So this is an opportunity for people to participate and see how departments can be successful. One example I give outside of enrollment, I said, for example, the departments, particularly the engineering and professional departments that require equipment. Right now, the dependency is on institutional budget for them to come and ask for what their programmatic needs are. I know that is logical. But on the other hand, if the department were to get entrepreneurial, go and raise some of that money, equipment money, by writing a grant or other means, then instead of saying, thank you, you don't need that money anymore, we will give some of that money to the department so that they can apply it entrepreneurially for other professional development and other activities. A good example, it has already happened. Our mechanical engineering, again, Brian Moravec authored a proposal, thanks to Dee Thompson, our foundation board president. She identified an opportunity with the foundation for equipment. Brian Moravec, Tracy worked with Brian Moravec. They came up with a document asking for $100,000 in equipment. Well, the foundation did accept the proposal with the requirement we raise a 50% match. So they will give 50% if we will raise the 50%. I'm happy to report both of them have been accomplished. So I want more departments to get entrepreneurial in that regard. And when they do, they will have more resources to work with. So that is the request of the task force in the fall. So that's kind of the overview on where this process is headed right now.
Questions, comments?
I have several concerns, and also some thoughts that one of my concerns is that putting together this task force, you're setting an expectation that something will happen and people will get more money as a consequence of that, rather than saying the outcome might be that our faculty are well compensated and we don't need to do anything about it, which then puts you in a difficult position. terms of being able to say, okay, then we're not going to increase faculty salaries, but thank you everybody for being part of this task force. So I worry a little bit about that. I worry a little bit about having something which is independent of degree programs. So if you want to hire a business faculty or an engineering faculty, but you're only going to pay them the same amount as somebody else where the demand is, is in our favor, the employer's favor, then that's going to make it difficult to hire people. So having been in those situations where faculty salaries are set according to the number of years of experience and their credentials rather than what discipline they're in, creates some significant hiring issues. And so you have to find other ways around that, and in some ways you have to break the bank to do those things. So that worries me also. And then the other thing that worries me is, or the question may be, with respect to the two separate campuses that we have, the cost of living differential between Klamath Falls and Wilsonville is not small. And so I don't think it's one of those one-size-fits-all solutions, perhaps, in that particular circumstance. So how do you hire a business faculty to work at K Falls, but you're only going to pay them a salary which is, at Wilsonville, when you're only going to pay them a salary at K Falls status. So I think that worries them a little bit. And then with respect to the merit compensation, there's always the worry about how do you cross-calibrate across disciplines. So a faculty member in subject area X who's done this great thing versus a faculty member in subject area Y, how do you measure the relative merit of those two things? Because otherwise you might then just give everybody an increase of merit for doing special things, but one is probably spectacularly higher than the other. And then the last thing is, it kind of leads into the discussion, as you had intimated, that as we encourage more and more faculty to do scholarly work, then how do we reward that as part of our review process or promotion process, but also as part of the compensation process? So those are the things that immediately come to mind. There's lots of others.
All good observations and questions. So I heard 5 things, so let me try to address them. One is the outcomes. Even though our intention is to really come through with some tangible outcomes in terms of compensation, not just talk, but we all have the financial reality that we cannot predict and project life is going to be rosy automatically. So we didn't give the house form away, but I wanted to put some commitment. That's why there is a pool of dollars now committed to being distributed as part of the merit discussion. The first report is due in June from the task force to me, so we'll have summer to discuss how that can be implemented. So we did commit some dollars. Hopefully our enrollments will get better and we'll have more compensation opportunities. With respect to the area, I agree with you. Obviously we have Cooper studies and others that are going to inform by discipline and subject what the compensation level should be. I mean, I do agree. Right now, having tried to hire people in the professional areas for 15 years, the challenges with respect to compensation, and the world has moved on. In 1986, when I became a faculty member, my startup was $600. That was half my moving truck. When I left, I was giving $600,000 startup, and I was losing faculty to other institutions. Now we are not a research institution, but Provost is beginning to pay attention to all these other attributes that will make it more attractive to come to Oregon Tech. So we are not going to walk away from the distinction between disciplines. We will pay attention to the market as well as the other studies, but to simply put people in a bucket because somebody has said you are technology, you're going to be paid only in that. People are asking, faculty are asking good questions. They are saying, so don't you want me to teach mechanical engineering subjects anymore? We are not walking away from the sensitivity of the disciplines. This is paying attention beyond. If somebody is contributing, it doesn't matter if it's a technology department, he or she should not be held back irrespective of the productivity. That is the objective here. We will continue to have the cost of living adjustments as we do right now. We do it in Portland. I'm beginning to get questions from Salem faculty that ours is different. So that is a component we cannot walk away from. The cost of living is certainly much more. There are debates on how much more, but that will continue. But we do have a cost of living component right now. With respect to the merit process across disciplines, one way to do it is to give a pool to each college so that they can, and then I'm hoping there could be a process by which departments earn shares of those merit, and then they can decide to distribute it in an appropriate way within those respective departments. It could be contributions in terms of teaching, it could be in other ways, but this is not something we are going to be done with overnight. But I'm hoping it will infuse more entrepreneurism in the department, so they look at other ways of creating wealth, not just doing their core duties responsibly. With respect to scholarly process, I think this is beyond compensation. Right now, our guidelines or merit policies or promotion policies, to the extent I have looked at it so far, really puts a lot more weight on institutional service in addition to, of course, good teaching and some form of professional development. And that is, there are increasing conversations, there are policies that are being discussed right now with respect to the faculty senate in terms of what the renewal promotion tenure should look like. And again, as you can imagine, that draws a lot of rebuttals on conversations, and we are going through that right now. So all good questions on point. Thank you.
Any other input or thoughts on this topic?
I'll just say that this discussion has been ongoing for many years. I'm appreciative of Dr. Nagy engaging the faculty in this particular effort. And it's long overdue, especially, I want to be more specific about the merit component. I think that that's been something that has troubled people at our institution, people, specifically faculty, for years. Why do we have this policy and it doesn't ever seem to work? And will there ever be dollars for this policy? And so I'm appreciative that you've paid attention to it at that level, and that you're moving the institution forward on that. I also wanted to say that, you know, it's challenging. One of the things I think that can be a little difficult is having a committee. So there are faculty senate committees, and then there are other committees that are set up for this. But I think that one of the things I wanted to say is that I think that you've done a nice job in organizing this committee in terms of having the right voices from places on faculty senate to make sure that those committee chairs, making sure that they're there, and other faculty from around campus, as well as administrators with this. So, I mean, I feel like the composition of the committee is a good one. And I appreciate your mindfulness on it, but there's no but there. It's really just I think this is an ongoing discussion that I'm appreciative that you're engaging in. I understand that I can see and hear from you that it's not going to be an easy conversation. There are lots of things to talk about, but you know, I appreciate you engaging in that because it's been something challenging or on the minds of faculty for quite some time, and maybe it always is. But yeah.
So I'll just make the observation. That's my experience that when you talk about bottoms up discussion about merit, it usually is spread evenly across everybody. So if you create a merit pool, you send it to the department, I think they would vote to say everybody gets the same. Not every department, but I think that's the tendency when you get group discussion. So I think, you know, merit kind of has to have some leadership with it in order to have that work. I think people could ultimately like it, but left to their own devices, I'm concerned that it would come out more uniform.
I have made a specific request in the communication that one thing we will not accept is exactly this peanut butter approach. It cannot be distributed equally to everyone. So the chairs and deans have to make those tough decisions. I think I even wrote it as a specific attribute expected of this outcome. They just cannot give the same amount to everyone.
I think following up on that, because I used to do this for a living in terms of faculty salaries in a private institution, and one of the things that came up as we put together a paper performance philosophy was how could you essentially game the system? So you could give a merit increase to somebody which would offset the fact that they didn't get such a large increase in the other one, so then they're using the merit pool not essentially to raise somebody up, but just to keep them at a certain level. So in some ways, we had a process by which you were not eligible for merit dollars unless your salary increase was, if you had a possible range of salary increase, as well as one of the highest, because you're getting recognized for that. But then the other side of that is how do you reward people for not seeking other opportunities? So if a faculty member came to you and said, I got this great offer from University X, then you want to keep them and you have to throw money at them. Then there are those people who don't do that, and their salaries then fall behind, or the market goes up so much that you end up with a salary inversion. So you're having to pay new IT people way more than IT people who've been there for 10 years or so. So it's an ongoing process, but there's also a recognition of certain special categories, if you will.
I mean, having gone through different variations over the last 20, 30 years, I know it will never be a perfect process, but all those are valid concerns. I tell people this is not going to be just one task force outcome. Everything is going to be fine for the next 10 years. But I am hoping what would really do is change the thinking at the department levels in terms of where the resources are, how they can think outside, not that they have to live always within this little bucket that has been given to them. The more they think creatively, more opportunities for them to be more successful in the quality of life. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, our next discussion item is our review of the board agenda. So this afternoon is a fairly short meeting. We'll start at 1:10. We have some things we're doing before then that I'll come back to, but from 1:10 to 4 is our meeting. We have a number of reports from the various stakeholders that we work with. We'll also, in particular, get an update on enrollment, as well as reporting out from our subcommittees. The consent agenda has the minutes as well as the recommendation that we made earlier on the naming. And our primary action item, which I anticipate will be a good part of our discussions, approving our fiscal year all funds budget for 2018-19. So I anticipate some good discussion on that. Otherwise, we'll be wrapping up around 4 in order to give our board an opportunity to go participate in Catalyze Climate. Is there any discussion or comments about the agenda?
Can we spend a few minutes at some point trying to clarify, maybe just for my benefit, exactly what we hope to accomplish or what will be on the agenda for our board retreat, as much as we know it so far, or other things that we would like to see on that?
Yes, Dr. Navig, are you comfortable covering that as part of your report up front, or would you like me to find a different time?
I will try to address it. I mean, we have some new topics that have come up even this morning in terms of financial planning and so on. We can make it more of a discussion perhaps, so others can weigh
Item 5, we have discussion items, so we could put it in there. I believe we'll have
I think
some
that would
time.
be helpful to get everybody's perspective on what you would like to cover.
Yes, and we also want to discuss the potential rescheduling of that board retreat, given that our facilitator is no longer available during the time we wanted, and we very much would like to have them back. So our retreat dates are proposed as August 13th, possibly the 14th as well. So just put that out there now. If you don't mind checking schedules prior to this afternoon, we can have that discussion. I know it is not ideal to try and move a date within the summertime period. But if you agree with me, I think we want a facilitator for our retreat.
If not, Carol will refer another facilitator when ADP.
We can have that discussion. I was hoping we could continue with the same person so we have that continuity. Any other business, new business? Thank you for raising the retreat discussion. All right, so with that, I'm going to adjourn this meeting, but stay for a second. I just wanted to discuss what's happening next. So we're going to go into executive session at 11:40. So you have about 10 minutes or so to take a break. So our executive session is from 11:40 to 1. We're going to be in the Mount McLaughlin room. And do I need to read this now?
Yes.
Okay. So I have to read through the required verbiage that the Oregon Institute of Technology's Board of Trustees will now convene to executive session per Oregon Revised Statute 192.6602F to consider information that is exempt by law from public inspection, or ORS 40.225 Rule 503 to engage in attorney-client privilege discussion, and 192.6602I to review and evaluate the performance of the president who does not request an open hearing. Note that no final action or final decision may be made during the executive session, and then our board will convene the regular board meeting after the executive session at 1:10. So if we can make our way across to the Mount McLaughlin room, that would be great.
And that's when food will be.
Oh, yes, and we do get to eat. Thank you. Or thanks, Sandra. I hear it.